This is CBC Vancouver News.
We are investigating if there are any ties to the government of India.
The arrest of 3 men in connection with the killing of a prominent Sikh activist in Surrey is sparking calls for answers about who allegedly enlisted them and why. And
when we reach out for constructive conversations about the challenges we face, we're getting stonewalled.
hundreds of container trucks drove across Metro Vancouver protesting new changes to the drayage industry, why some trucking carriers are concerned. Plus,
important to gather because it shows that we are stronger together, that we're not allowing this to go and be unheard.
honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and renewing calls for justice. How people across the province are marking Red Dress Day. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. We begin with the latest on the investigation into the death of prominent Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was gunned down outside a Surrey Gurdwara last June. India now responding to the arrest made on Friday. The foreign minister says Canada was at fault for welcoming criminals into the country. The CBC's Salima Shivji reports from Mumbai.
It was news months in the making. 3 arrests of Indian nationals nearly a year after Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed on Canadian soil. Justin Trudeau now keen to reassure the country's Sikh community.
Canada is a rule of law country with a strong and independent justice system.
But investigators had little to say on the alleged involvement of the Indian government. Even if sources tell CBC News, police believe that to be true.
We are investigating if there are any ties to the government of India.
An allegation Indian officials have angrily denied from the get-go, and again this weekend. India's foreign minister says he doesn't know much about the men arrested or any gang affiliations, but he blames Canada for what India has long accused the country of doing, fostering a safe space for those that Indian officials consider violent extremists.
A number of people with organized crime links from Punjab have been made welcome in Canada. We have been telling Canada, saying, look, these are wanted criminals from India.
Even with India's strong denials that it orchestrated any assassination plot. On the campaign trail this election, the Prime Minister has been flexing his muscles and embracing the image of a nationalist strongman, protecting his nation at all costs. Against perceived enemies. This is a new India, he says, that will come into your home and kill you. For many in Canada's Sikh diaspora, statements like that one are chilling, as those close to Hardeep Singh Nijjar pray for more evidence to be revealed by law enforcement.
We think that this can happen again, unless India is held to account at the international level.
All police will say is that the investigation isn't over. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
With a closer look at the fears the Nijjar case has ignited, the CBC's JP Tasker has this report.
Canadian Sikhs are on edge, fearful they could be targeted by India's government, despite 3 arrests in the murder of Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
I don't think these arrests are going to change a heck of a lot until the operating minds are exposed.
The World Sikh Organization wants better protection for separatists like Nijjar, who want a Sikh homeland called Khalistan.
He was told repeatedly that his life is in danger, but he wasn't given any resources to defend himself or to prevent an attack on his life. The assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar was an abject failure of Canadian intelligence as far as I'm concerned.
This week's report on foreign interference released by Justice Marie-Josée Hogg suggests Canada is concerned about India's clandestine footprint.
Foreign interference, which is generally but not exclusively the work of authoritarian regimes.
Writing in her report, Indian officials rely on networks of proxies to liaise and work with Indian intelligence officials in India and Canada. They target people aligned with Khalistani separatism, which India views as a seditious threat.
Those responsible for the killing of this Canadian citizen on Canadian soil will be held to account and face the justice system.
Canada's public safety minister is promising justice for the Nijjar family, but he's tight-lipped about what Ottawa will do to keep other people safe.
I think we need to have confidence that the RCMP will do the work.
That's left some Sikhs feeling vulnerable.
This is very clearly a part of a much larger conspiracy.
Sources who spoke to CBC News believe the 3 men arrested have ties to a powerful Indian gang. And while those ties are being investigated, community leaders fear an assassin could strike again.
It's India that is actively using organized crime syndicates to target Sikh activists.
JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
A group of Metro Vancouver semi-truck drivers came together today to protest proposed changes to BC's drayage industry. As Saurabh Sandhu reports, they say new licensing requirements could have a detrimental impact on small and medium-sized container trucking companies and ultimately Canada's supply chain.
Hundreds of trucks line Highway 91 as part of rally organized by the Port Transport Association, a group representing more than half of the drayage companies operating out of Vancouver terminals. These trucking companies are voicing concerns over proposed changes to the industry and new licensing requirements for port container carriers.
Essentially, this commissioner is basically saying Sea and Rail can't haul their own containers unless they have a port truck. They're saying to a lot of the larger Canadian transport companies, they can't haul their own equipment unless they have a port truck.
License renewals at port terminals are done through the Office of BC Container Trucking Commissioner, which was formed in 2014 to establish rate regulation for drayage companies and ensure compliance.
All these changes were done after 4 months of consultation with the industry, where the proposals had gone out to industry. They were invited to provide written submissions.
But the association disagrees and says better communication and transparency is needed.
The main issue that we're feeling is the lack of communication and transparency with the Commissioner's office and the ministry. When we reach out for constructive conversations about the challenges we face, we're getting stonewalled.
Johnson says the changes will have detrimental effects on BC small businesses, jobs, and ultimately Canada's supply chain. He says the new licensing requirements will open the door for bigger companies to monopolize the market.
It would essentially cut our business in half.
Commissioner McKinn says there are roughly 74 truck companies operating more than 1,600 trucks out of Vancouver ports, and he does not anticipate that to change with the new licensing requirements.
We have different categories of small, medium, and large that we consider when it comes to issuing licenses. And so we ensure that there's room for small operators, medium operators, and large operators.
The association says they have raised these concerns about the new changes with BC's Transportation Ministry, but are redirected to the Commissioner's office. CBC News reached out to the ministry, but did not receive a response by deadline.
We're calling for to have somebody take a look at the Commissioner's office, how it's structured, and possibly change it up. One man should not have this much power and control over the supply chain.
The association says if the province does not address their concerns, larger rallies will be planned in the days to come. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
People across the province are marking Red Dress Day today, a time to raise awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, and for many, a chance to honor and remember their loved ones. As Claire Palmer reports, this year there are also renewed calls for justice.
More than 100 people marched through the streets of downtown Nanaimo on Sunday.
Our heart goes out to the ones that have lost loved ones. Our heart goes out to the ones that are missing their family members.
Candlelit vigil at this park, a place for families and friends to honor the victims, and for some still seeking answers, to find closure.
It felt very sad because she should have been lighting a candle on her birthday. I shouldn't be here at an event lighting a candle in her memory.
For years, Hall has been advocating for Lisa Marie Young, a 21-year-old woman who went missing more than 2 decades ago. Today would have been her 43rd birthday.
It'll open people's eyes to the reality of many Indigenous missing women and just women in general. Like you mentioned, Sherry Corrigal is our latest woman missing from Nanaimo.
The Native Women's Association of Canada maintains a list of roughly 600 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people across the country. BC has one of the highest number of cases. Along the Highway of Tears near Prince George, red dresses hang from evergreen trees, fluttering in the breeze. In Abbotsford, an awareness walk brings solace to those who are here to honor and remember missing and murdered Indigenous women.
It's important to gather because it shows that we are stronger together, that we're not allowing this to go and be unheard. These are humans. At the end of the day, these are humans, Indigenous humans who have gone missing, and we are not doing enough to bring them home to their families.
Back in Nanaimo, organizers of the march say the day is not only to raise awareness, but to take action. The Haven Society for Women is creating a list of BC organizations and contacts to help impacted families.
I think that it's important to know who your local resources are, who your local supports are, and that the community can wrap around that person rather than a family feeling very alone and reaching out to federal resources.
If a bunch of people got together and created that resource, I feel that maybe there'd be more awareness, maybe their loved one could be found faster and they're not waiting 22 years later like we are.
She says there's more work to be done to better support Indigenous communities and create change. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
If you or someone you care about is affected by missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and are looking for support, you can reach the National Crisis Line at 1-844-413-6649. It operates 24 hours a day. A pro-Palestinian student encampment at UBC was met by counter-protesters today.
So I think it's a very hypocritic show what we can see here. I personally didn't see any single Canadian flag here. We just marched here and we sang "Oh Canada" and we marched with our Canadian flags as well.
The group walked around the encampment waving flags. Police were also on hand. Organizers of the UBC encampment say the crowd has gotten larger over the past week. The students are calling for an end to the war in Gaza and for the university to divest in companies that are complicit in the conflict. A historical lighthouse, a grain elevator, and a monastery. It's stiff competition for Chinatown's Heritage Language School, but that's what the field looks like for the next great save, which pits historical sites against each other for funding. Georgie Smythe explains.
We got this building in 1923, so just as the Exclusion Act started.
For decades, Chinese immigrants to BC kept their culture alive in these walls. But the walls are starting to fall apart, and keeping the dream alive is expensive, so volunteers started a campaign.
It's a competition for heritage sites across Canada.
The Monkyung School became a finalist in the Next Great Save, which funds the restoration of historical sites if they get enough votes. People behind the initiative have history here too.
My grandfather was the principal of the school.
The school officially closed in 2011, but until then it was a hub for Cantonese language, customs and community, especially during the Chinese Exclusion Act years, when the movement of immigrants from China was heavily controlled till 1947. Through all that, it endured.
It's like uncovering things that our elders maybe band-aided just to kind of keep going. As we move things, we'll find out like, oh, there's a hole with another like section of files.
The Chinatown School is up against some pretty iconic Canadian sites, like a much-loved lighthouse in Prince Edward Island and 3 striking and historic grain elevators in Alberta. The legacy at the school is more subtle. It's in the school books, still in their cabinets, faces framed on the wall, or boxes of artefacts still holding the fragments of people's lives.
It's a constant unearthing of pretty cool history.
Volunteers say the process of getting on the list has been restorative for their cause too. They say whatever the result of the vote, they plan to reopen the language school in the summer.
It's important that these places continue to exist in the city.
People working in the heritage space say it's important people see these sites as more than just structures.
It's really a place where people hand over knowledge to younger generations.
Funding winners will be announced this week. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Thousands of runners from around the world laced up their shoes and hit the pavement this morning for the BMO Vancouver Marathon. It was a record-breaking event this year with more than 23,000 people registering, the largest turnout since the marathon started in 1972.
Last time I ran as a banana, and someone said, "Are you doing that to set the Guinness World Record?" And I said, "No, I was just doing it for fun." And he said, "Oh, there's like all these like world records for costumes. You should look them up." And I looked up the banana, and the record was like 2:04 or something. It's like not possible. So my wife thought it'd be funny if I ran as a runny nose.
The race, which is roughly 42 kilometers long, raised more than $36,000 for the Run for Hope charity program. Today's event saw many Canadians taking the top spots in the men's, women's, and adaptive athlete categories. Nearly a week after a cybersecurity attack, some London drugstores are reopening. More on that after the break. Some London drugstores are starting to reopen across Western Canada, including here in Vancouver, after a cyber attack forced the pharmacy chain to shut down all of its locations for nearly a week. And as Yvette Bren tells us, the company still isn't revealing much about what happened.
In the heart of Vancouver, London Drugs is showing signs of life after a cyber attack.
It's like it's Christmas shopping. People are very excited to be back.
About a dozen of the company's nearly 80 stores reopened doors Sunday, but that took 7 days. It's a slow process.
Skeleton crew and not much in the way of services.
The chain is also a major pharmacy, leaving some scrambling to fill prescriptions, with in-store pharmacies only open for emergencies.
They told me that I could pick up a prescription, but I needed cash to pay for it.
The company has offered no details about what happened, saying only that customer data wasn't compromised.
Most often when this happens, it's some form of ransomware attack where a hacker has gotten into the network.
Across the country, cyber attacks have targeted everything from governments to hospitals, often by hackers trying to extort ransom. BC's libraries hit just this week.
I suspect that many organizations have been taking this threat too lightly, underinvesting in it.
Brand experts say hacked companies need to better communicate with loyal customers.
And you need to do that. You need to be over-communicating. Right? They almost need to say, holy cow, those guys are really showing me the love.
For now, customers say they're happy to see doors open.
As a store where you get like pretty much anything you need, like from a snack to like, everyday grocery or like hair products or anything that you could think of.
More locations are expected to reopen their doors in coming days. Yvette Brent, CBC News, Vancouver.
WestJet and the union representing its maintenance engineers have reached a tentative deal, averting a work stoppage that could have started disrupting flights as early as Tuesday afternoon. The union says aircraft maintenance engineers still need to ratify the tentative agreement. Here is a live shot of Burrard Inlet facing the North Shore. I'll have your full forecast coming up next. All right, it's time now to take a look at our forecast. Let's begin with the temperatures around the province tonight, starting in Dease Lake with a high of 3, or a low of 3 rather, overnight, and some rain pretty much blanketing most of the province overnight, but it should be more light showers for areas such as Williams Lake, Kamloops, Victoria and Tofino. And moving into tomorrow, that rain is going to stick around in many areas, including Dease Lake with a high of 9 for tomorrow, a high of 14, so definitely warming up in Fort St. John with those scattered showers as well. Nice and sunny in Kamloops with a high of 18 for tomorrow, and in Victoria, a high of 14 for tomorrow, again with some of that rain. And here in Metro Vancouver, we're going to continue to see about a 60% chance of rain for tomorrow. That's going to dry up with some cloudiness on Tuesday with a high of 15. And then we are warming right up to a possible high of 23 on Friday. Just 2 Canadian teams remain in the Stanley Cup playoffs after the Leafs' Game 7 overtime loss last night. And as Philip Lee Shannock shows us, round 2 will be a Western Canada battle.
And then there were 2. The Toronto Maple Leafs lost a nail-biter Saturday night to their longtime rivals, the Boston Bruins, a crushing defeat in overtime, leaving the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers in the hunt for the Stanley Cup. Toronto's drought now extended to 57 years. By now, fans are stunned, sad, but not surprised.
I'm still having a hard time processing it.
I think we're cursed. We're just cursed in general.
A Canadian team hasn't won a Stanley Cup in 31 years. Of the 4 Canadian teams that made it to the playoffs, Toronto and Winnipeg both made first-round exits, leaving Vancouver and Edmonton.
They're playing each other, and the bad news is one of them is going to be gone. The good news is one of them is going to be moving on to the conference final and theoretically have a 1-4 shot at ending this decades-long drought.
It's the 3rd time the Oilers and Canucks have met in the playoffs. They first met in 1986. The last time in 1992, Edmonton came out on top. Fans of both teams are already gearing up for a fight. The premiers of Alberta and BC are on the bandwagon. They've got a bet that involves the loser wearing the other team's jersey.
There's going to be a lot of back and forth between these 2 fan bases. It's not often we get 2 Canadian teams going up against each other in the postseason, especially in the later rounds.
The puck drops in Vancouver this week. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
And speaking of the Canucks, they were on home ice today as they prepare to meet the Oilers for the second round of the playoffs. All-star goalie Thatcher Demko has been ruled out for Game 1 of Vancouver's second-round series, but it's not yet certain if Casey DeSmith or Arturs Shilovs will start. Shilovs went with third-string goalie to starter in the Canucks' crucial elimination games.
You just have to be always ready, a lot of things happen in life, accident, someone gets hurt, right? And you just have to be ready to embrace your moment.
On Friday, Shilovs made a series of key saves late as Vancouver blanked the Nashville Predators 1-0. The victory marked Shilovs' first ever NHL shutout.
I think that he just did a great job, and he's a young guy, but obviously very competitive, and the moment wasn't too big for him, and really happy for him, and really happy for our team that we have another guy like that.
And it's official. The Canucks will take on the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs on Wednesday, and you can catch all the action right here on CBC. That is your late news for this Sunday. Thank you so much for watching. For news anytime, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on Radio 1, CBC Radio 1 rather. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. So have a great night.